Whether you like Disney or not, one thing's for sure, they've made some really iconic villains. My name is Clint, I'm obsessed with wood carving, and today I'm going to carve Jafar from Aladdin. I started with some stitch drilling around the outline of Jafar, so this is the front view, so the outline from the front of his face. And this just means I can drill around the outline so it's easier for me to cut things away, and then using the chisel once again to use the grain against itself, which is something I know I say quite a lot, but really it helps a lot, saves a lot of time, and also can be really satisfying. And wood carving itself is satisfying anyway, but just chipping away at things because the grain allows you to break off things easier, you know. This just makes it a lot more fun. Now I'm using a big file chisel just to round off loads of bits around the top of the turban, and now a V chisel just to make that kind of gap where the nose is. Patrick Stewart actually was asked to do the voice of Jafar, but he had to turn it down apparently due to a scheduling conflict with Star Trek. Apparently he regretted that decision, so I think it would have been interesting to have Patrick Stewart as Jafar. Now I'm using a sort of bent chisel, and in fact there's one chisel in particular that has rounded corners, which a couple of people have asked me about, and I don't really know what to call it. I've looked for it online and I can't figure out what it is, but I'll try and find it. So when outlining something like that with a gouge like an eye or a jewel on that turban, I try to push the gouge away from the line and making a slight angle rather than going straight down, because I found that when you push straight down you can sometimes mess up the line that you're trying to create around the piece, breaking away bits of wood and stuff like that, and it doesn't really seem to help the overall look, and sometimes it makes it so you have to re-carve it again, and go, you know, carve a little deeper into the wood, which is not always the best. So now I'm just carving a little bit more wood away from underneath the turban. This was kind of tricky because I was trying to figure out the face and the shape of the turban at the same time, all the while leaving the beard alone. The V-chisel I found could be a really good tool for outlining cuts, but sometimes I find it isn't always appropriate, especially when making curved lines. You can often forget where the grain is, where you're using it, where the grain direction is, and then that can lead to some tear out and some splitting and stuff. Though, you know, it's important to note that this is just my own observation from my own technique, and I'm sure more skilled carvers can achieve more than I can with the same kind of V-chisel. Interestingly, along with Patrick Stewart, Tim Curry, Kelsey Grammer, John Hurt, Christopher Lloyd and Ian McKellen were considered for the role of Jafar as well. I think any of those would have been an excellent choice. In the end though, Jafar was voiced by a guy called Jonathan Freeman. I had to look that up. I didn't know him. I don't really know who he is, so relatively unknown actor, but I think he did a really good job. Another use for the V-chisel, you can see here, is to clean up little corners of carvings. So especially when one feature meets another feature and there's a change of level, the V-chisel can be used to clean out that sort of annoying little corner that you can't quite get to with the other chisels. I mean, you can use the other chisels for it, but sometimes I find a V-chisel just leaves a nice little cleaner cut. Here I had to use the coping saw to cut away. That was a little bit scary, but it was scarier when I had to use the saw on the beard, which I unfortunately don't have footage of because I was standing in the way when I recorded it, so we don't have footage of that. And here I am just trimming down the shoulders with a couple of nice big gouges, and then trimming off the top of the feather there. And this, for me, was one of the most one of the nicer parts of the video to watch. Very satisfying to see that little piece of wood there peeling away. I really like this clip. so I had to keep it. And then coming back down again. This is another instance where you could use a V-chisel probably just to go straight up there. But the V-chisel I have is a bit too big for the centre line of that feather, so I decided to do it with a straight chisel and just kind of cut from both sides. Basically doing the job of a V-chisel, but with a couple of extra cuts, pretty much. And there's something to be said for that, extra little cuts. Sometimes it's better to make little cuts than it is to try and make one big cut. You know, you can be more accurate in a way. Using a little push drill there to make the gap behind the beard, it just helped me cut away an extra piece of wood so that I could then do this and kind of chip it away a little bit. After this was when, after I made the gap there, that's when I used a fret saw to cut the little bit of the beard there, but as I said earlier, I was standing in front of it during the recording, so showing that to you would be pointless because it would just be a picture of my back. So unfortunately I missed that bit out. But that just happens sometimes when you're recording and you're trying to carve at the same time and also talk to the chat, because I was doing this live on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/TimberandU, by the way, if you're not familiar with it. So I was trying to keep all those things on my brain at the same time, and I guess my brain slipped up a little bit. And now I'm just cleaning up the beard a little bit with that same flat chisel. This was quite a difficult process, lots of slicing as you can see there rather than pushing too hard for the cuts. And there's probably another bit that I missed out a bit on the recording because it was just a difficult thing to try and do, so I guess I avoided it a little bit with the recording. But I did try and record as much as I could. So with all the bits cleaned up, I then chopped it off the base with the Ryoba, and then I started the painting process. What I decided to do this time, different to Luca, was to use the acrylic paint to paint a sort of undercoat first. I don't know if this helped in the long run or not, and whether I would do it again, I'm not sure. But I found that when I painted Luca and I didn't do any undercoat, that when some of the colours met each other and they sort of bled together, it made different layers of colour that looked a bit strange. So I decided to do an undercoat first in the hopes that it would stop that happening. The black was just a standard black, and in fact all of these are just standard acrylic paints, the kind of paints that you would probably use in school as a kid, I would think. Sort of poster paints, I guess we would call them. You can see I left the bottom kind of rough, because I wasn't too worried about it, but I wanted to clean it up a little bit. And now these colours I'm putting on are pretty flat colours, and I actually did, after I did all this painting, I actually did take it indoors and I used some watercolours by a company called Kuretake Gensai. These Japanese watercolours that have really sort of vivid hues to them. And so I did more to the face and added some shading. I did more to the the little piece under his beard, on his neck there. You can see that's really flat colour. And I just think that helped it stand out a lot more in the end. You'll see that with the final pictures, hopefully. And I just had to mix up only a few different colours really. I mean, we have red, we have black for the turban and the kind of shoulder pad thing. Then we have this kind of golden yellow for around the jewel and under his neck. Then the red for the feather is pretty much the same red as the jewel, and probably this was the hardest colour to mix up, the face tone. Trying to get that right is difficult, you know, especially when you don't just have like a bottle of paint that says flesh tone, and of course because everyone's flesh tone is completely different. This bit was really tricky, getting this tiny brush to do the eyebrows, and then he has kind of like eyeshadow around his eyes, so that was kind of difficult. Not eyeshadow, what's the word? Eyeliner, that's it. I have to try and get that term right. And there's the moustache and the beard and the final look. I had a lot of fun making it, partly because, you know, I love wood carving, but also because it was a challenge, and I have really fond memories of watching Aladdin with my siblings. I also bought this fancy new turntable, you can see here, to show off things with a bit more pizzazz. if people still say pizzazz. The whole carving and painting probably took about 15 to 20 hours. I didn't really keep track of this one, if I'm honest, and I actually recorded 3 hours of footage for this video, which I condensed into 10 minutes. I know this is often said thing by creators, but a lot of work goes into making videos, and trying to figure out a carving while also trying to get the right lighting and angle for each shot can be really difficult. I'd like to thank you guys, by the way, for hanging around while I've made my transition into solely wood carving content. And I know a lot of you primarily subscribe for the general woodworking and recycling I used to do. If you feel that wood carving isn't for you, then that's totally okay. I would never want you to watch videos due to loyalty to someone, but rather because you actually enjoy them. You know, time is a very precious resource, and I'm flattered you want to use your time watching my progress. As always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or observations, feel free to comment below. Catch you soon.